Hello everyone, Gary Klein here, and thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to kind of maybe answer some questions as far as skipping a bait, around boat docks or around cover. Just let me kind of break it down a little bit for you and make it very simple. First, let me say that to become a good skipper takes a lot of practice, and you end up developing the technique with obviously a reel that you have in your hand that you're comfortable with and the right action rod, and you got to practice the motion. I skip an awful lot, and folks, I'm not the best skipper out there, and I've been doing it for quite a few years. But let me just kind of lead you through what goes through my head with skipping jigs, trailers, and what I look for. First, we think as an angler that we tie a lure on the end of our line and we make a cast, and we take an artificial bait and we put it, we just make a cast, okay? And we put it into the environment trying to catch a fish. But there's a lot that goes into how you present the bait even on top of the surface. And the skipping technique is a very natural presentation. So a lot of times, even if I'm in open water, fishing down the bank, instead of making an overhand cast, I will deliberately make a skip cast. And it seems like when the fish are in real shallow water, they track with their eyes, and that little bait coming across the top of the water, for some reason, triggers the fish. Now, most common, anglers skip around boat docks. Something that they want to go underneath and get way back up into the shade pocket. And this is our Gary Klein flipping jig. But if you look at what I did with the shoulders of this bait, I flared them. And I gave a very flat surface where you make your initial contact on the water to start to skip. The other thing that you'll notice on the jig is it's fuller. I actually have more material on this bait to make it bulkier to keep it on top of the water. 5/0 Fusion 19 hook. Everything lays out on this bait really good. But let's talk about trailers. Once you're fishing a jig, which in my opinion is one of the most versatile baits ever made, okay? There's a lot of things that an angler can do to change the action of that same jig simply by the trailer that they choose to use. Now, normally when I'm skipping a very compact bait. I don't like a long trailer. The less I have, the better and the easier it is to make that really nice long presentation on a skip. A lot of times I'll fish a bait that's got wigglies on the end of it, knowing that when I skip it up there on a slack line, when it falls, the wigglies is going to keep the jig falling vertical. Okay, just think about that. Anything that turns water is going to kind of helicopter down, is going to hold the bait up so your jig will fall flat. If I want more of a slide presentation on the jig where it's doing a directional change, then I have the tendency to go to more of a flat surface, non-wiggly type trailer. And how you put the trailer on the jig will really determine your flat size and how easy it skips. On a big chunk like this, which I love to skip, I rig it flat side out, down, all the way onto the shank of the hook. Again, that's creating a very compact bait, and it skips very, very easy. Here's our flat-sided crawdad. It's a great, great trailer for flipping. Fishing line-wise, normally I'm always skipping with heavy line, 17, 20, anything that you can manage on your reel. And in the very beginning, when you start practicing your skipping technique, the number one problem people have is the fluffing in the reel. Get away from fluorocarbon and go to monofilament. I would suggest that you start out with 17-pound test Berkeley XT. It's very forgiving, it's a very strong line, and you'll have less backlashes in the reel when you're trying the skipping technique. To really create a lure that will help you perfect the skipping technique, it's like you're skipping a flat rock. The flatter the rock is, and also the heavier the rock is, the easier it is to skip to a certain point. So that's why I only have it in a 3/8 and a 1/2 ounce. And I probably skip a 1/2 ounce more than I do anything else, because normally with the skipping technique, the fish are triggered and the bite comes real quick. So when you make your slide up underneath a boat dock, normally the jig doesn't really sink very far at all and your line hops. It's usually the fish are suspended back up in that shade. So therefore, The flatter I can make this bait, the easier it is to skip. That was the reason to flare the head. And I want, you know, I have a perfect transition from my line to the knot to the back side of the head, and I want to continue that transition. I don't want anything to catch the water. And by rigging a plastic that's got a big flat side to it, and also you like our bunker hog, it's a heavy bait and it skips also very, very well, but it's flat-sided. So when it's going across the water, there's nothing that's going to reach out and catch the water. But again, folks, you'll end up, the more you do this, the more you're going to really appreciate it. It's a fun way to fish, but just don't think skipping only works underneath docks, because a lot of times in shallow water, a skip presentation is just as important, you know, as skipping underneath the dock.